Hello! Today we're going to read The Lunch Bunch, Kindie Keeners, Chapter 8, November, Miss McAlister Has a Secret. On Monday, while they were eating their lunch, Andrew noticed that Matthew had some Halloween candy in his lunch kit. Andrew had eaten all his candy the night of trick-or-treating. That could only mean one thing. Matthew had stolen candy from Andrew's bag at home. "Hey, Matthew, where did you get that candy from?" asked Andrew in an accusing voice. "It was the last of my Halloween haul, and I wanted to finish it up with my lunch," he lied. "That is crap, you filthy blackguard. You ate all yours days ago. You stole my candy." Andrew raised his voice. That led to pushing and shoving, and the brothers were battling wildly in the classroom. Matthew started laughing, and then he turned into a puddle of giggling, rolling around the floor. Andrew said in a very quiet, serious voice, "I don't like being your twin or your brother." Then Andrew started to cry. Matthew stopped giggling and went quietly back to his table. He had never heard his brother say those mean words before. Finally, it was time for the lunch recess, and Frances thought she would explode with excitement. She went to the playground first and waited anxiously for the members of the lunch bunch to join her for the recess meeting. She could hardly wait to share the latest news with her friends. "Secret spy agents, I have the best news. We have another situation to solve right now." Frances looked to the group for questions. Brandon and Ashley stared blankly, not having a clue where this was going. Brandon hardly moved his lips and whispered, "Did I miss something?" Frances went on, as they were all still staring blankly at her. Ashley shrugged back at Brandon. They were unsure of what Frances was talking about. The word secret spy agent got the attention of the lunch bunch. Frances continued on. "There is something secretive going on with Miss McAlister. When I was the last kid in the recess lineup, she shut the door behind me, kind of quickly. I peeked through the window in the door, and she was making a phone call. 'Keep your eyes open, agents.'" And with that command, Frances dismissed the lunch bunch to go about their regular recess activities. Andrew blew off steam running all recess with Brandon. The two racehorses had a good relationship and would run side by side without saying much, but enjoying the wind in their faces. Matthew had been hit hard with the mean stick by Andrew, so it was a somber recess of reflection for him. He couldn't even muster up the energy to climb and sat quietly by himself at the bottom of the playground equipment. The words, "I don't like being your twin or your brother," kept replaying over and over in his head. Leroy noticed and put his book down. "Are you Matthew or Andrew?" "I'm Matthew," he said quietly. "Andrew runs at recess with Brandon." "How do you know our names?" wondered Matthew. Leroy replied, "I sit here every day at recess and read. I know Frances from the library, and she has an ear-shattering voice that could wake the dead. I hear everything she says, including your names." "You look sad." "Just brother trouble." "This too will pass," Matthew confided. Tuesday was Granny Janny's day in KM, and she came in to help. With another set of hands in the classroom, Miss M decided to follow up with Ashley about her being sad at coming to school. She called Ashley to a quiet spot in the hall, and they sat together on a bench. "Is there anything I can help you with so you're not sad to come to school?" asked Miss McAlister. Ashley confided in Miss M. "What would you do if you knew someone was taking things home that belonged in the classroom and didn't belong to them?" Miss M thought about it. "I would probably have a talk with that person and remind them that it's wrong to take things that don't belong to you. The classroom play items belong to everybody, and it's not so much fun when the pieces go missing." Ashley listened to Miss McAlister and replied, "Maybe I will give that a try." Granny Janny loved to read to the students. The author of this month was Robert Munch. While Miss M pulled the kids to work with them on how to match counting blocks to number cards, Granny Janny pulled out a book to read to the class. She started to read Moira's birthday to the class. Frances squished beside Pooja to listen to the story. If Pooja sat crisscross, then Frances sat crisscross. If Pooja coughed, then Frances coughed. In fact, it seemed that Frances spent so much time watching Pooja's every move that she missed the whole story. Granny Janny noticed how frustrated Pooja was watching Frances mimic her. After she finished the book, Granny Janny said, "Can you kids sit in the story circle for just a few more minutes? I have a special surprise." She pulled a book off the shelf and sat in the teacher chair. She announced, "Today there will be a celebrity reader in kindergarten. Would Frances please come to the teacher's chair and help me read this book to the class?" Frances lit up, jumped to the front, and plunked herself on Granny Janny's knee. Granny pulled out the book called Ruby the Copycat by Peggy Rathman. Granny held the book, and Frances read the whole book to the class. The kids at the carpet were amazed at how well Frances could read. When the students moved to table work, Granny Janny pulled Frances aside. "Today you did a great job reading that book to the kids. Remember, Frances, that everybody has something to share with the class. Think about Ruby in the story that you read to the class. Don't forget that Pooja has special talents, and she likes to share with the class as well. Pooja sometimes finds it annoying when you copy everything she does. It makes her not want to be your friend. A kind friend is happy to watch you share your talents and let you have your moment without trying to do better. Do you understand, Frances?" With that, Pooja came over and told Frances she thought that she was a remarkable reader. "Good job," she said. Frances was starting to understand how to be a kind friend. On Friday, November 14th, at the end of the day, each student received a legal-sized envelope that contained the first report card of the year. Ms. M had called the Kindies to the carpet a bit early to make sure the envelopes were safely zipped into backpacks. "My mommy can't wait to see my report card," bragged Frances to Ashley. "She says I am the brightest girl in the world." Andrew shared with the group, "Our mom warned Matthew not to throw his report card in the garbage like he did last year." "I don't even know what this is about," admitted Brandon. Some of the children were oblivious to the importance of the beige envelope. They were neither excited nor worried about carrying the information home to their families. Ms. McAlister reminded them, "Your parents need to read the report card with you and talk about how well you did in kindergarten this term." The bell rang and school was dismissed for the weekend. On Monday, it was school as usual. Pooja reported, "My family and I read my report card, and my parents said they were so proud of me." "Hey, same here, Pooja," agreed Ashley. Report cards were really nothing to be worried about. Parent-teacher interviews followed shortly after report cards went home. They took place after school in the classroom. Brandon and his mum had booked the first interview of the event. Brandon's mum had his hand in hers, but he was not his usual self. He seemed to cower behind his mum. In his hand was a brown paper lunch bag. Ms. McAlister smiled. "Welcome to the classroom. Come in and sit down." Brandon's mum immediately began, "Brandon has something to tell you." Brandon carefully put the bag on the table and started to tear up. He was without words. Miss M asked, "Is the bag for me?" Brandon nodded, then hung his head down. When she opened it up, she saw over 1,000 of the class beads from the bead center. Brandon told her quietly as tears rolled down his cheeks, "I love the bead center, and I love making necklaces for my mom. Every day when Ashley and I went to the bead center, the necklaces got bigger and bigger. I just thought my mom would love them more and more, so I put them in my backpack and took them home." Brandon's mom continued, "I thought nothing of it and assumed they were take-home crafts. Ms. McAlister smiled and got up and hugged Brandon, who was still weeping. Brandon, you are so brave to tell me about your mistake. It is hard to do the right thing, and I'm so proud of you. Thank you for returning the beads. We'll make lots of take-home crafts for your family, soothed Ms. M, and she promptly put the bag of beads on the shelf with the other center items. She hugged Brandon again, and then, as if nothing had happened, started the interview. Ms. M made a mental note to tell Ashley how proud she was that she talked to Brandon and encouraged him to fix his mistake. Brandon attended with his dad, and Andrew came with his mom. Miss M had asked that the twins have their own separate interviews. Miss M wanted to talk about the strengths of each twin as they were different in many ways. Mr. McMillan, we love having Matthew in our class. He has a phenomenal sense of humor. Matthew's dad was wincing, waiting for the rest of the conversation. He had heard it all before. Ms. M continued, he is doing well at reading and math, and we are working hard with him on his fine motor skills, printing and drawing. Thank you for working hard, Matthew. Do you have any questions for me? Matthew and his dad were in disbelief. I'm not in trouble? Matthew asked his teacher. Trouble? What about Matthew? Ms. M wondered. Matthew is the bad idea guy of the family, Ms. McAlister, and he often makes poor choices, explained his dad. We find him kind, full of life, and love his creativity. I have no issues. Keep working hard on your printing and coloring, Matthew. She smiled and told them it was time for Andrew's interview. I thought that went better than I expected it would, Dad, said Matthew, as he and his dad high-fived each other. Same here, son. Andrew was worried when he left the car with his mom when it was time for his interview. You're so nervous, Andrew. Is there something you're not telling me? Ms. McMillan asked. I'm so worried that Matthew is going to get into trouble with Ms. M at his interview, he blurted out. Stop your worrying about our Matthew. He'll be fine. He always is. Ms. M will not tell Dad anything about Matthew that he hasn't heard before. We are here to talk about you, Andrew, and celebrate your learning. Mum knew best. Andrew had a stellar meeting with the teacher. The interviews for the entire class were positive, and families left knowing their children were in good hands. The next morning, Frances reminded the lunch bunch they needed to meet at recess. We have business to attend to, agents. Hurry to the playground. At the meeting, Frances started by saying, first on the agenda is Ms. M, and second will be the suspect list for the backpack notes. What is an agenda, Frances? Wondered Brandon. Frances raised her impatient voice. A list, Brandon. It is a list. Frances took a calming breath. Matthew whispered to Pooja, glad I didn't ask. I asked you all to keep your eagle agent eyes open, and now let's share what you have to report about Miss M, Frances continued. Ashley started. There's something definitely going on about her. Something is different. We can all take turns being at the end of the line to see if she's still shutting the door at recess, suggested Pooja. We can take turns doing bathroom runs during our recesses, said Frances. We'll ask the outdoor supervisor if we can go to the bathroom, then sneak a peek through the window in the door. We'll share our info about Ms. M at the next lunch bunch meeting. Who wants to take the lead on the suspect list? I've been thinking lots about this, Andrew offered. Still, the only suspects are Ms. M, Granny Janny, and Mr. Smith. We might not see them putting anything in our backpacks because we're out of the classroom for lunch, gym, recesses, or music. He smirked at Matthew and said, let's look for anybody suspicious in the hall and put it on the agenda for next meeting. Matthew giggled at Andrew, mocking Frances. The whole class loved exploring five senses. Today, they were going to play a team game called What Sense Do We Use? The Kindies were divided into 5 color groups, with Andrew and Matthew purposely put in the same group so Miss M could observe how the brothers worked together. The object of the game was to identify the senses used for each item. Ms. M explained, "When I write campfire, what senses do we use?" Frances blurted out, "Of course we use our sense of smell." "Please, put your hand up next time, Frances. You are correct. What else?" Andrew put his hand up. "You can see it, so we use our sense of sight." "Yes, Andrew," she remarked. Brandon was next. "I can feel the heat of the fire." "Well done, Brandon. Any other senses we use, kids?" she wondered. And Ashley said, "Sound. We can hear the crackle of the fire." "You've got this, gang. Now let's play." Matthew and Andrew were having so much fun playing the game, they forgot about the Halloween candy incident and were caught up in the game. When the scores were tallied, Miss McAlister announced that Team Macmillan was the winner. Matthew and Andrew were ecstatic. They were hugging each other and laughing and high-fiving each other. When they were by themselves at the end of the day, Matthew said quietly, "Andrew, I'm sorry that I stole your Halloween candy. Do you still hate me?" Andrew was serious and replied, "Sometimes, Matthew, when you make poor choices, I don't always like you, but I will always love you, brother." Matthew whispered to Andrew, "Ms. M missed a question. Fart?" And the answers are smell and sound. And with that, Team Macmillan laughed their heads off. Pooja was looking forward to the last lunch bunch meeting in November. She had news to tell the other agents. Frances took over and asked, "What intel have we got on the Ms. M mystery agents?" Matthew poked the bear, could hardly keep a straight face when he said, "What exactly does intel mean, Frances?" "Information, Matthew, information." She was exasperated. "What do we know about Ms. M?" Pooja started. "I saw Ms. M making a secret phone call at first recess. She wasn't mad or sad, but having a good conversation." Ashley added, "I saw her giggling a lot on the phone at lunch recess." "So to summarize, which means sum up what everyone said, Matthew," Frances said, a bit annoyed, "Ms. M made secret calls on her class phone at both recesses. She did not seem to be sad or scared, and she was giggling." "I got a note in my backpack, agents." Pooja couldn't wait for Frances to finish and interrupted her. "Pooja, I did too," said Brandon. "I got a note in my backpack." "Two at once. What does that mean?" Brandon asked in a high-pitched voice. "Make that 3. I got one as well," exclaimed Ashley with eyes wide open. "What did they say? Were you able to solve them? Tell us what they said. You start, 003. Construction crews left a trouble light. Next. 004, demanded Frances. Brandon followed quickly with his. Always whisper. Finally, 005, ordered 001 smugly, using spy numbers. Ashley continued with her clue. Welcome to the secret spy agency headquarters. Pretty straightforward, remarked Andrew. Could the idea that 3 notes at once left for us mean a sign of urgency? What is behind the door at the end of the walkway? I think we need to meet this Saturday, said Brandon. Let's see what's in there. Matthew said it would probably work with the brothers, but would check with their mum. Quite off topic, Matthew told the team, I have the 3rd signal figured out. We are okay, and he demonstrated by tapping both arms on his shoulders. It certainly didn't have the pizzazz of the something excellent move, but it would get the job done. Brilliant 002, commended Frances. She decided they all needed to use their spy numbers more. Let's finish this up on Saturday, said Andrew.